Imagine this. You've spent your whole life being the dutiful daughter, always there for your father, helping him in every way possible. You believe that your loyalty and love have been recognized and valued. But then, one day, you discover the unthinkable. Your father has secretly rewritten his will, leaving you with nothing. Instead, he's given everything to your brother, blindsiding you completely. This is the story of OP, a woman who thought her bond with her father was unbreakable, only to find out that behind her back, he had made a decision that would shatter her trust and change her life forever. It's a story of betrayal, family politics, and the emotional scars left by a parent's shocking choice. I stick around because by the end of this story, you'll see how OP confronts her family, uncovers painful truths, and ultimately finds a way to rebuild her life. Let's dive into this heart-wrenching tale. OP had always been close to her father. From a young age, she was the responsible one in the family, the daughter who made sure things ran smoothly at home. Growing up, her brother James was the rebellious one, always getting into trouble and relying on their father to bail him out. OP, on the other hand, was the one who helped her father manage the household and later the family business. OP's mother passed away when she was still in college, leaving her to take on even more responsibility. She stepped up without question, caring for her father emotionally and practically. She helped him run errands, kept the house in order, and even became his unofficial business partner as she helped him navigate finances and operations. OP did all this while balancing her own career and personal life, always believing that her father saw and appreciated her efforts. OP and her father had a special bond, or so she thought. They often had long talks about life, about the future, and about the family. Her father would tell her how proud he was of her, how he relied on her to keep things in order. OP felt secure in her role within the family, knowing that she was making a difference in her father's life. And while she and James didn't always get along, she never doubted that her father valued her just as much. For years, OP assumed that when the time came, her father's estate would be split between her and James. It wasn't about the money. OP wasn't driven by material gain, but she had invested so much of her time, energy, and love into the family that it felt like a natural expectation that she would inherit part of what she had helped build and sustain. She never imagined that her father might have other plans. As her father got older, OP noticed that his health began to decline. He wasn't as sharp as he used to be, and there were moments when he seemed confused or forgetful. OP became even more involved in his care, making sure he had everything he needed. James, on the other hand, was largely absent. He lived in another state, visited occasionally, but never took on any real responsibility. One day, after her father had a minor health scare, OP decided to take on more responsibility for managing his affairs. She was sorting through some paperwork at her father's request when she stumbled upon something strange, a copy of his will. Curiosity got the best of her, and OP opened the document, expecting to see her name and James's name listed as co-beneficiaries. What she found instead left her speechless. The will had been rewritten. OP's name was nowhere to be found. Instead, the will left everything, her father's estate, his savings, and even the family business, to James. Not a single mention of OP. Her father had completely disinherited her. OP felt a wave of shock, disbelief, and betrayal wash over her. How could this be possible? She had devoted her life to helping her father, to being there for him when James was nowhere to be found. How could he give everything to James without even telling her? It didn't make any sense. Her hand shook as she read through the will again and again, trying to understand what had happened. The words blurred together as tears filled her eyes. OP felt like her entire world had been turned upside down. Had her father always planned this? Was there something she had done to make him cut her out of his life like this? The questions swirled in her mind, but there were no answers. Unable to make sense of the situation on her own, OP decided to confront her father. She needed answers, and she wasn't going to let this go without understanding why he had made such a devastating decision. She approached him gently at first, sitting down with him in the living room one evening. "Dad, I found something today," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I found your will and—" "I don't understand. You've left everything to James. Why? What did I do to deserve this?" Her father looked confused at first, as if he didn't fully understand what she was talking about. But then, a flicker of recognition crossed his face. He sighed heavily, rubbing his temples before finally speaking. "It's not like that, sweetheart," he said. "It's complicated." OP pressed him, desperate for clarity. "What's complicated about it? I've been here for you all these years, helping you, supporting you. James hasn't. So why would you leave everything to him and nothing to me?" After a long pause, her father finally explained. He told OP that James had been going through a difficult time, financial troubles, legal issues, and a failing marriage. He felt that James needed the money more than OP did. "You've always been the strong one," he said, his voice filled with guilt. "You've got your life together. James, he doesn't. I thought this would help him get back on his feet." OP couldn't believe what she was hearing. It wasn't about fairness. It wasn't about loyalty. It was about her father's misguided belief that James needed the money more. OP's loyalty and sacrifice had been taken for granted. Her father had assumed that she didn't need anything because she had always been the one holding everything together. The revelation stung deeply. It wasn't just the money. It was the fact that her father didn't see her contributions or value her loyalty. He had chosen to reward James, the son who had always taken but never given back, while leaving OP to fend for herself. After confronting her father, OP knew she had to talk to James. She needed to know if he had been aware of the will, if he had somehow convinced their father to cut her out. When she called James to ask him about it, he didn't seem surprised at all. "Yeah, I knew about the will," James admitted casually. "Dad told me a while back. He thought it was the best decision for everyone." OP was stunned. "You knew? And you didn't say anything? You didn't think it was wrong to take everything and leave me with nothing?" James shrugged, clearly unfazed by the situation. "Look, you've always had everything together. You've got your career, your house, your life figured out. I've had more struggles. Dad was just trying to help me out. It's not personal." "Not personal?" OP felt like she had been punched in the gut. James had known all along, and he hadn't said a word. He had taken advantage of their father's misguided favoritism, knowing full well that OP had been the one carrying the weight of the family all these years. The betrayal was deeper than she could have ever imagined. From that point on, the relationship between OP and James became strained. The trust that had already been fragile between them was shattered completely. OP couldn't look at her brother the same way anymore. She had always known that James had a tendency to take advantage of others, but this felt like the ultimate betrayal. Family gatherings became tense, with unspoken resentment hanging in the air. OP tried to distance herself from James, but every time she saw him, she was reminded of what had been taken from her. Not just the inheritance, but the sense of fairness and loyalty she had always believed her family stood for. Despite the emotional toll of the situation, OP wasn't ready to give up just yet. She decided to seek legal advice to see if there was any way to contest the will. She felt betrayed not just by her father's decision, but by the fact that she had been completely blindsided. She wondered if her father had been pressured or manipulated into changing his will, or if his declining health had affected his judgment. After consulting with a lawyer, OP learned that contesting the will wouldn't be easy. But there were potential avenues to explore. If she could prove that her father had been mentally unfit when he changed the will, or that undue influence had been involved, she might have a case. The lawyer warned her, though, that legal battles over wills could be long, emotionally draining, and costly. OP was faced with a difficult decision. Should she fight for what she believed was rightfully hers, knowing it could tear her family apart even further? Or should she walk away, accept the situation, and try to move on? The thought of giving up felt like letting her father's betrayal win, but the idea of a protracted legal battle was overwhelming. OP ultimately decided to move forward with contesting the will. She felt that she had no choice. Her father's decision had been unjust, and she needed to stand up for herself. But as the legal process began, OP quickly realized just how exhausting it would be. The tension with James grew worse, and other family members began to take sides. Some supported OP, while others felt she was being selfish by challenging her father's final wishes. The emotional cost of the battle weighed heavily on OP. She had always been the peacemaker in the family, the one who held things together. Now she was at the center of a storm, and it felt like her family was crumbling around her. The stress of the legal proceedings took a toll on her health, and there were moments when she wondered if it was worth it. As the legal battle dragged on, tensions between OP and James reached a breaking point. They barely spoke anymore, and when they did, it was through lawyers. The family rift grew wider, with some relatives cutting off contact entirely. The weight of the betrayal and the ongoing fight for justice felt like an unbearable burden on OP's shoulders. One day, OP's lawyer called her with devastating news. After months of back and forth, the court had ruled in favor of James. The judge had found no sufficient evidence to overturn the will, and OP's efforts to contest it had failed. The estate, the family business, and all of their father's assets would go to James as originally outlined in the will. Hearing the news felt like the final blow. OP was crushed. She had fought so hard for what she believed was right, only to lose everything in the end. The sense of betrayal, the feeling of being discarded by her own father, was overwhelming. She had lost not just the legal battle, but her family, her sense of security, and the bond she thought she had with her father. In the days following the court ruling, OP struggled to cope with the emotional toll. She felt lost, as if everything she had known about her family, her values, and her place in the world had been torn apart. The betrayal had cut so deep that she wasn't sure how she would ever recover. After months of emotional turmoil, OP realized that she couldn't stay in this dark place forever. She had to find a way to rebuild her life, to find strength in the face of the betrayal that had left her feeling so broken. She began by focusing on her own well-being, physically, emotionally, and mentally. OP started therapy to work through the intense feelings of anger, grief, and betrayal she had been carrying. Through therapy, she learned to process her emotions in a healthy way, to acknowledge the pain of what had happened while also finding a way to move forward. It wasn't easy, but over time she began to heal. As part of her healing process, OP reconnected with the parts of herself that had been lost during the legal battle and family drama. She threw herself into her work, pursuing new opportunities and focusing on her career. She rekindled old friendships that had been neglected during the chaos of the past year, finding comfort in the support of those who truly cared for her. OP also began to reclaim her sense of identity. For so long, she had defined herself by her role in the family, taking care of her father, managing the family business, and keeping the peace. But now, she realized that she needed to find out who she was outside of those responsibilities. She explored new hobbies, traveled to new places, and embraced the freedom of living life on her own terms. As OP continued her journey toward healing, she realized that the key to moving forward was letting go of the past. The betrayal would always be a part of her story, but it didn't have to define her future. She made the difficult decision to forgive, not for her father or James, but for herself. Holding on to the anger and resentment was only holding her back. OP understood that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting what had happened, or pretending that the betrayal didn't hurt. It meant releasing the grip that the past had on her, allowing herself to move forward with peace and clarity. She chose to focus on the life she wanted to build for herself, rather than dwelling on what had been taken from her. As OP found peace within herself, she also made an effort to rebuild some of the fractured relationships in her life. She reached out to family members who had distanced themselves during the legal battle, not to seek their approval or validation, but to mend the bonds that had been strained. Some relationships healed, while others remained distant, but OP was at peace with whatever the outcome was. With a newfound sense of purpose and strength, OP embraced her future with optimism. She had weathered the storm of betrayal and loss, and now she was ready to move forward on her own terms. OP knew that her worth wasn't defined by her father's will or the inheritance she had been denied. Her worth came from within, from the love, loyalty, and strength she had shown throughout her life. OP's story is a powerful reminder that even in the face of betrayal, we have the strength to rebuild, to find peace, and to reclaim our lives. Family betrayals cut deep, but they don't have to define who we are. In the end, OP found that her greatest inheritance wasn't money or property. It was the resilience and self-worth she had discovered through the journey. OP's journey was filled with heartbreak, betrayal, and loss. But through it all, she discovered a strength she didn't know she had. She learned that true value doesn't come from material wealth or family approval. It comes from within. OP's story is a testament to the power of resilience and the ability to rise above even the most painful betrayals. In the end, OP chose to define her life on her own terms, finding peace and happiness in the knowledge that she had done her best and had remained true to herself. The family betrayal would always be a part of her past, but it didn't control her future. So what would you do if you discovered your father had secretly disinherited you? Could you ever forgive, or would the betrayal be too much to bear? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Wow, this is so infuriating. This story makes my blood boil. OP spent her whole life being the good daughter, stepping up after her mom died, running the house, helping her dad, all of that, only for her father to just erase her from his will and leave everything to the deadbeat brother? It's unreal. How could he not see her value after all she did? Exactly. The father literally took OP for granted and rewarded the son who couldn't even be bothered to help. This kind of favoritism destroys families. She didn't deserve that betrayal after dedicating her life to him. It's like OP was punished for being responsible and holding everything together. Meanwhile, the brother gets rewarded for failing at life. It's not even about the money. It's about how little the father valued her loyalty and hard work. So messed up. James is the worst. James is the kind of person that just rides on everyone else's hard work. Not only did he know about the will, but he didn't tell OP. That's a whole new level of trash behavior. He didn't care about fairness or family. He just wanted to take everything for himself without a second thought. James has some serious audacity. He knew the whole time and let his sister keep sacrificing herself for their dad, knowing full well she was getting screwed over. I can't even imagine the level of selfishness that takes. I wonder if James manipulated their father into changing the will. Either way, he's a total snake for going along with it. He just wanted an easy way out of his own problems. OP deserved better than to be treated like an afterthought by her own family. This is what happens when parents play favorites. This whole thing is a classic case of parents playing favorites and thinking it won't backfire. The father basically chose the son who gave him nothing over the daughter who gave him everything. It's sad how often this happens in families. Parents thinking that the more responsible kid will be fine on their own, while the troubled one needs special treatment. Yeah, it's so unfair. The dad basically assumed OP didn't need help because she had her life together, but he didn't realize that she needed recognition, not just financially, but emotionally for everything she did. It's so messed up when parents think it's okay to reward the struggling sibling by screwing over the one who's reliable. OP didn't just need money. She needed to know that her father appreciated her loyalty and hard work. He totally failed her. This is why boundaries matter, I feel for OP. But this is also a reminder that sometimes, no matter how much you give, people won't appreciate it. Her dad clearly took her for granted, assuming she'd always be there no matter what. OP deserved so much more, but this is why it's important to set boundaries in families, especially when you're the one carrying all the weight. Totally agree. OP gave so much of herself without ever questioning it, because she believed that love and loyalty would be enough. But without boundaries, people like her dad and James just take advantage. It's heartbreaking, but a lesson. Setting boundaries would have saved OP a lot of heartache. She should have prioritized herself more instead of always sacrificing for people who didn't return the favor. It's a sad reality, but sometimes you need to protect your own peace. Man, this story really hits close. I've been in a similar situation where I gave everything to my family, only to be overlooked when it mattered most. It's gut-wrenching. I hope OP finds peace and realizes her worth doesn't depend on her father's will. She deserved so much better. I feel you. It's such a punch to the gut when the people you've sacrificed for don't recognize or appreciate you. I hope OP understands that this says way more about her father and brother than it does about her. They're the ones who should feel ashamed. Same here. I've been burned by family, and it really messes with your sense of self-worth. OP gave everything she had, and it still wasn't enough for them. But she has to realize that she's better off without people who treat her like that. The fact that James didn't even care is disgusting. The worst part of all of this is that James didn't feel 1 ounce of guilt. He knew OP was getting screwed over and didn't even bother to tell her. What kind of brother does that? He clearly has no shame, no empathy. OP's better off cutting him out of her life completely. Seriously, James is the lowest of the low. He had the chance to do the right thing and stand up for his sister, but instead, he played along for his own benefit. I hope OP never speaks to him again. He's a snake. That part killed me too. The fact that he wasn't even surprised when OP brought it up shows how little he cares about her. I wouldn't blame OP if she walked away from her entire family after this. No one needs that kind of toxicity in their life. I really hope OP finds peace and moves on from this. It's heartbreaking that her own father betrayed her, but she's strong, and she's going to rise above this. The best revenge is living a happy life, without needing the approval or love of people who don't deserve it. Yes, OP needs to realize that her worth isn't tied to what her father left her in a will. She's so much stronger than that, and she's going to find happiness beyond all this drama. I'm rooting for her to thrive without them. OP's worth doesn't come from money or family validation. It's clear she was the one holding everything together, and now she needs to focus on herself. I hope she builds a life that's full of peace and success, far away from the toxicity of her father and brother. And if you found this story as powerful and emotional as I did, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell for more stories like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.